I'm going to take you step by step and give you the tools so that you can easily at home make photorealistic portraits out of graphite and watercolor. That may sound like a tall order, especially if you're not very experienced in painting or drawing. But what you'll find as we go on is that more than anything else, learning how to draw and paint photorealistically is more a matter of patience than skill. Anyone can learn how to do it. All you have to do is be willing to do exactly what I do and take your time to practice techniques until you're comfortable with them. In many cases, I'm going to provide you with the materials that I'm using so that you can duplicate exactly what I'm doing at home. Even if you think that what I'm doing seems too simple or that you can get the benefit of it by simply watching me, take the time and do it yourself. In the beginning courses, I'm going to be tracing images. I want you to do the same. If you do everything that I do, and you gradually build up to classes, repeating them as necessary until you're comfortable with each step, then at the end you will have everything you need to be the very best artist that you can be. So let's get started. Everything in art is made up of positive and negative shapes. This portrait of a man. There are the positive shapes of his eyes, the shape of his head, the shape of his suit, and there is the negative shape of this white area around. You need to be able to see the difference between the positive and the negative shapes if you want to be able to draw them. Everything is made up of shapes. Colors, shadows, lines, they all form shapes. And so the first step in learning how to draw them is learning how to see them. In order to make that as simple as possible, I took this picture and I used Photoshop, but you can use any photo manipulation program that you're comfortable with. I changed the threshold and I increased the starkness of the contrast to simplify it greatly. And what I wound up with is this. It's the same exact photo, but see how much more simple this has become. There are only black and white tones. There's no gray. The black shapes represent the positive shapes, and the white are the negative shapes. So now you have to learn how to paint them. Don't worry about trying to draw what you see at this level. I just want you to trace it. So blow up your picture to the size that you're comfortable working with, and then use a piece of watercolor paper if you're going to be painting, or drawing paper if you want to work with graphite or charcoal, and then use a light box or hold it up to a window and trace every little line that you see. In the end, you're going to wind up with something like this. Notice, importantly, that I've also marked off the corners of the picture frame, so I know exactly where the picture would end. That's very crucial to composition, which we're going to get into a little bit later. So now I'm going to get a flat brush, damp, and then squeegee off the excess water with my fingers, and I'm going to work right on the dry paper. I want to paint exactly what I see, so this paint is very, very black. And once you've trained yourself to hold the brush, you'll be surprised at how much detail you can put down with a flat. So I'm going to just start here, painting exactly what I see. I'm just filling in these shapes. I'm going to start in the largest areas, being very careful, however, not to cover up those tiny whites. You can see on your photograph how crucial those whites are, especially when you've increased the threshold and you can only see black and white. A tiny dot of light is the difference between the person having an eye and not having an eye. So work carefully and paint exactly what you see. In these more finicky details, I have to go a little bit slower. I might have to get a little bit closer to the paper as well. I have my reference material right next to me so that I can continually refer to it as I'm putting in anything that I'm not sure of. Also remember that your paper is not stuck to a marble top. You can move that around, and you should move it around whenever you feel like you're reaching awkwardly to get a line. Make it easy for yourself. At this stage, there's no blending. It's just simple black and white. The important point of this exercise is seeing those shapes, putting them in as shapes. I'm using the flat on the edge and putting in those small details, but in certain cases you really just can't get quite small enough. So then you should switch to a tiny round, something like this, and use that to put in those tiny details. If I've matched my paint right, there shouldn't be any noticeable distinction between using one brush and the other. But for the most part, you should be using that same large flat. There are going to be areas where you can work quickly because they're large, and there will be areas that are small and finicky. And this exercise is also a good warm-up for teaching you how to change speeds as you paint and draw. So pay attention, do the best job that you can. I'm going to do the same, and I will come back to it when I've finished this black. Here's the painting. So you can see that just by taking your time and working from a simple reference, you can already, in this stage, make photorealistic paintings, because in fact this looks just like the photo. Remember, if you want darker colors, you have to use less water. The more water you use, the more you're washing out your color. So this is what my paint looks like on the plate. See, here's my big blob. It's not running all over the place, and you can see that there's a lot of paint there, so I can get a nice deep tone. Another lesson that you probably learned as you went through was that your painting is only as good as your tracing was. If you got sloppy in the tracing and you didn't mark down every line that you saw, then suddenly you're going to wind up with a painting that's not exactly what you see either. The best way to ensure that you can paint what you see on the photo is to draw what you see on the photo first. And that is going to remain true at this stage and in the most advanced stage and every stage in between. Your painting is only going to be as good as your reference material. So keep it precise all the way through. Let's move on now to lesson 2.